everyone, it's Tracy here. Today I'm starting my card by doing a little bit of heat embossing. So I used my powder tool on a piece of Coordination's 110-pound cardstock, and then I'm going to stamp this elephant from the Unforgettable set by WPlus9 with my Versamark ink. So I'll go ahead and stamp that, and just a note, I am going to stamp another thing with that, so you just want to make sure that you have enough room to stamp that. I almost ran out of room, so I should have done it a little bit farther over. But I'm going to heat emboss that elephant with the gold embossing powder by American Crafts, or Zang. And then I have the balloon stamp from the same stamp set, and I just cut this little mask out. So I'm going to go ahead and place that mask right over my elephant. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want the string to be in the like on top of the elephant's nose. I want it to look like he's holding it, so that will mask that off so that the string part doesn't stamp right across his little trunk there. You can see I almost ran out of room, my balloon almost got cut off, but I made it work. So then I'll go ahead and remove my mask, and then I can put some more of that gold embossing powder over the balloon, and then I'll go ahead and heat emboss that. So that will be my image, and I am going to cut it out all in one, so that's why I wanted to heat emboss them together. And since I had the mask on there, I had to heat emboss the elephant first, just because if I put the mask on there with dry embossing powder, it would all come off with the mask. So I am coloring in this elephant with the Prismacolor water-soluble colored pencils. So what that means is that these react with water and they blend a lot better with water. You don't use the Gamsol like you use with regular colored pencils. These just need water, so it's one less product, I guess, for you to have to buy. So I colored in the elephant with the Cool Gray 50% colored pencil, and I'm blending that together with my water brush. So you can use a regular paintbrush too if you prefer, but the water brush is just easier since the water is right in there, and then the water is a little bit more controlled. So then the spots that I want darker, I just go in and add a little bit more of that colored pencil, and you'll notice when you color on the wet surface with the colored pencil, it's a little bit more like, it's a lot smoother than just the dry colored pencil, so it is a little bit of a different texture, you'll notice. And you can color with the colored pencils if you just dip them in a little bit of water. You can do it that way as well, but I prefer coloring in the image and then using my water brush to blend them together. And then I did use a little bit of the blush pink in the elephant's ear. So then I'll go ahead and color in the balloon. I have the True Blue color, and I'm coloring in that whole thing, and then you can see I add a little bit darker in the upper right hand corner, and then I also went in with the purple, which is called Violet, and added a little bit of that in there as well. And these colors do match the watercolored background that I am going to be creating later on in the card, so that is why I chose those colors. So that water brush just helps blend in those colors together. And then you can also, like I added a little bit of a white spot like in the balloon, you know, where you would see it shine. I just kind of went over my water brush and it picked up that color a little bit. So they're really easy to work with, and I do believe you can purchase them separately at Michael's if you don't want to purchase a whole set. So now I'm taking the Simon Says Stamp Stitched Rectangle die, and I'm going to cut this out of a piece of watercolor cardstock, and you can see I placed it more towards the right hand edge because I'm going to create kind of a window like I did a few weeks ago or a week ago, except I'm using vellum this time so you won't be able to actually see through it. But I'm running that through my Cuttlebug, and then I'm going to take my white A2 size card base, and I'm going to line that up on there and then place the die over that again because I want that window in my card, so the card base is going to have that cutout piece as well. So once I get my watercolor piece on there, I'll line up that die And this one's a little bit trickier because you have to line up the stitched pieces on the outside as well. But you can definitely tell when it's in place where it needs to be. So I'll open up my card base just because I don't want to cut on the back, obviously, so you want to leave it open. And then run that through my Cuttlebug, and then you'll get that window part in your card base. And then I can set my card base aside because I won't be needing that quite yet, but as long as I had my Cuttlebug out, I wanted to cut that as well, just kind of get it all done in one swoop. Alright, so then I'm stamping these solid hearts from the same WPlus9 stamp set all around my watercolor piece. So I'll be stamping those with the Versamark ink. Because I am going to watercolor on this, those stars will then, the watercolor or the distress ink won't stay on those stars. So it's an embossed resist technique. So I am going to cover those with just Hero Art's white embossing powder. You could use the gold embossing powder like we used for the images if you want that to match, but I just liked the white because it's a little bit more subtle and they don't stand out quite as much. So like I said, I'm going to watercolor. I'm using some distress inks. So I have the shaded lilac, the peacock feathers, and the squeezed lemonade. And now that I'm realizing that, those are the three that actually came together in the set. So I guess that's why I liked them so well together. But I thought that they were kind of spring summery. So I like to put some water on my cardstock first. I think it just helps the colors kind of blend a little bit and then they stay in that spot where you want them to be. So I'm starting with the peacock feathers and I'm just adding that onto my cardstock in a couple different places. I can always go in and add a little bit more in with the other colors. So then I will go on to the shaded lilac, and I add quite a bit of water to the colors that are on my distress or my nonstick craft sheet. I just find it easier to add a lot of water because then it helps them blend better, and I kind of want this to be a lighter background, just again so it doesn't stand out so much compared to my images. And then I can go in with my last color, which is the squeezed lemonade. And then once I get that completed and all of the colors blended how I like, I just took my heat tool and dried that completely so that I can move on to the next step on my card. But you can always let it air dry if you have enough patience, but I definitely do not. So then for the window part, I said I was using some vellum, so I just cut that down to size and I just placed it behind my window so that I knew where to stamp my sentiment. So I have the sentiment from the WPlus9 set. It says, "You are absolutely unforgettable. It's your birthday that's hard to remember." And I heat embossed that with the gold embossing powder. But just a note on this sentiment when you're heat embossing that, those words on the bottom, they're really skinny, so they kind of all heat embossed, like melted together, so it's a little bit difficult to read. So you might not want to heat emboss that sentiment. I would definitely suggest just stamping it with regular ink. I decided to leave it because I could read it and I'll probably give it to somebody, you know, who's more likely to be able to read that, or I'll be there to give it to them so I can read it to them. So I just taped that piece of vellum to the back, and then I'm taking my ATG gun and adding some adhesive so that I can adhere that down to my card base. And then you just want to line up the window part so that it's even with the window on the card base. And then I am going to adhere my little elephant and balloon down. I'm just using the small foam squares from Best Creation. So I can go ahead and remove all of the little backings from those and then adhere that onto my card base. And then the last step, I am going to add some sequins. I'm using the white 4 and 5mm, I believe, from Pretty Pink Posh. I just like to sprinkle a few of those. I kind of work in the triangle, like the groups of 3, so you'll see I place 3 little clusters on my card. It's just a little bit more visually pleasing, and it draws your eye in to where you want it to go. And then I am adhering those into place with the multi-matte medium. I've also used the Tombow Mono Multi-Glue or Glossy Accents, so it's kind of a personal preference and whether you're going to mail it or not. And then that is my finished card for today, so hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. We would love to have you. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys back here next time. Bye!